as you said, I'm the Managing Director of Safe for Kids. I live in Perth, Western Australia. I don't have children of my own. I have a beautiful, supportive husband, but he doesn't have children either. We've been together for 10 years and we've both dedicated our lives to keeping kids safe because, if we don't have them, we've got the time to help everybody else keep their children safe.
So, hello everyone. We are back with another episode of Humans of Mitti Ke Rang. I'm your host Abhishek Kumar. Today we have a very impeccable personality, Holly and Martin, with us from West Australia. She's the founder and managing director of Safe for Kids with over 35-year experience in teaching about child abuse prevention education. Hi, ma'am. How are you?
Very well, and thanks for having me.
Thank you, ma'am. I would like to express my gratitude on behalf of whole team of Mitti Ke Rang. We are so glad to have you here, ma'am.
I'm really proud to have been invited.
Thank you, ma'am. So, ma'am, tell us something about yourself and your life in West Australia.
Well, as you said, I'm the Managing Director of Safe for Kids. I live in Perth, Western Australia. I don't have children of my own. I have a beautiful, supportive husband, but he doesn't have children either. We've been together for 10 years and we've both dedicated our lives to keeping kids safe because, if we don't have them, we've got the time to help everybody else keep their children safe.
So, ma'am, tell us about your journey with Safe for Kids and how you started.
Okay, well, I started my career as a teacher assistant working with kids with special needs, and I was in a school here in Western Australia for kids with special needs, and a volunteer bus aide was sexually abusing children on the bus. He was a foster carer, and the year before I started at that particular school, that happened. And so the year I started, the principal had everybody trained in a program called Protected Behaviours. So for 25 years, I taught it to the children that I'd been teaching. But then in 2007, I went up into two remote communities here in Western Australia, where Aboriginal communities, where some really bad stuff was happening in my long service leave. And so I took a huge loan out of my home and quit my job and have been doing it full time ever since 2007.
So many years. So, ma'am, what is child abuse and what types of child abuse are there?
So with child abuse, so there's physical, mental, sexual, but our program, we don't actually just focus on sexual abuse. The program Protective Behaviours was designed as a sexual abuse prevention program. I call it protective education now because when Protective Behaviours was designed back in America in the late 70s and then came to Australia in the late 80s, we didn't have internet and stuff like that. So, when I'm talking to parents, I say that it's, protective education and that it's a life skills program, not just focusing on the different forms of abuse because that can frighten people. And I've had parents come up after workshops and go, Holly, do you know what? Don't worry about the kids. I need this in my life. So, if we just focused on sexual abuse, and when I'm training adults, I say that up to 1/3 of children will suffer some form of sexual abuse before their 18th birthday. But that's the whole spectrum. So that could be an old man flashing kids at a bus stop showing their private parts, to kids seeing pornography, right to the most heinous acts. There are other statistics that say that it's 1 in 3 girls, 1 in 6 boys. But those are the hardcore stuff. But even a child being exposed to or seeing pornography still changes the child from that day. So, it's also, the program is a bullying prevention program. It's a suicide prevention program. It's a drug prevention program, because we base our program on empowering children, giving them language, giving them a voice. So, helping them set up the safety team. And there's so many aspects to the program that And that's why we prefer to talk about it as a life skills program rather than just focusing on abuse.
This is so great. We actually have a lot of women empowerment program, but you started this child empowerment program. That is really very very wonderful, ma'am.
And we have to start it when children are 3.
Wow.
Um, I've written a program to start the program from 3 for childcare centres because one of the big things that we talk to kids about, and it was never part of the original old Protected Behaviours program, is we have to explicitly teach children about consent. When I'm working with 14-year-old young men in high school, they tell me they are watching 2 hours a week of pornography. I love your eyes. Yes, it is shocking.
Yeah.
And yet when I say to them, fellas, why would you look at that? Oh, to learn technique, miss, to learn style. Let me stop you right there. Not the right technique and there's no style, but there's no kissing, there's no pleasure for women, and 88% of pornography is violence against women. And yet that is what our teens think is normal. And there is no consent in porn. So I say that we need to teach consent from this big. Now I know culturally some of your followers will find this, quite confronting because I've spoken to quite a few people from different, in February I was in Qatar. And culturally sometimes children are made to kiss everybody goodbye or whatever it is. And what do you mean my grandchild doesn't have to sit on my knee? I'm their grandparent. But we're not saying that grandparents are abusing children, but what I'm asking grandparents and all family members to do is, if we can empower this little child that you own your body and nobody's allowed to touch your private parts without your consent. It's not about lots of parents, they're my children, and if I want to do brush their hair, or we can still get children to consent, but we can empower them at the same time. So we do need to start the program when children are 3, and I believe that we need to start talking to children about pornography from the age of 6.
So I was reading newspaper days before. I just came through a statistic in which I saw that the cases of child abuse have been increased by 30% in this lockdown and COVID stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I was talking to a lady who was a counsellor in India, and she was telling me about, a young 8-year-old girl who, when India went into lockdown, everybody had to stay where they were. And, her uncle was in, he couldn't go back to his village and he sexually abused her. And then she was told that she couldn't talk about it because it would bring shame on the family and all of this stuff. And I'm not, trying to demonize anybody, but we have to give children a voice around this and talk about it, because otherwise, if we don't, it continues. Children turn to drugs or alcohol or other, might start self-harming and all these other things to deal with what's happened to them. So we have to advocate for children.
Yeah, also here we have that factor of reputation of family, and that's why parents taught their kids to talk about it and to go open and talk about it freely, and also aware others as well.
No, you're exactly right. Yeah, we need to advocate. We need to look out for these little people and, not think that it's bringing shame on the family. The perpetrator's the only person that, should be shamed is the perpetrator, not the child. So, and I know that that's going to be a big cultural shift. It's, I go into lots of remote Aboriginal communities here in Australia. And again, it's a very patriarchal society and children are sexually abused, and then the family get the children to retract their story if they report it to the police, and then the family say, oh, that kid, she's a little liar, or he's a little liar. No, they're not. They were made to take their story back. It's not that they're lying. And evidence shows that there's such a small percent of children that actually lie about this. It's just negligible.
It's just not important to report about the case, but also to aware the society about what happens with you, and it could be happen with anyone also.
And, something that not many people are talking about across the world, to be honest, that I can find is that about 45% of sexual abuse on children is either children to children or teenagers on children and in families. And I saw a statistic recently here in Australia that children that are being charged by the police from 10 to 17, that's up 35% in the last 5 years. And every case is leading back to the children having seen pornography and then acting it out on siblings or other children and things like that. So pornography is having such a huge impact on our children, um, and yet governments aren't looking at age verification or protecting children that way either.
But also children are very smart. They actually find a way of VPN jumping and hacking and stuff.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, age verification is not going to stop everything.
Yeah.
Um, but like Pornhub, which is it's free. There were there are sections of it that actually you had to pay for, but when COVID hit, they made all that free so that people got hooked on seeing all that violent and really big end of town stuff. And then when they go back and turn it back to paid for, they've already got people addicted to it that are going to pay for it. So children are so savvy. You're right. Kids will get around filters and all of this stuff. And that's, for me, that's why education is the only way forward. We have to give kids the language if they see it to be able to tell. We need to talk with young people about how addictive it is. And I've worked with 17-year-olds that have erectile dysfunction from watching it. And when I say, fellas, why would you look at that? And they say, to learn technique and things, but they also say, oh, but Holly, it's so exciting. And my girlfriend just lies there. And so, it is dehumanizing women, desensitizing young people. And it's not just boys that are watching it. They did a study here in Australia, and the statistics are from 11 to 17-year-olds, 90% of children that age have seen porn, of boys, and 65% of girls. And it's having different impacts on both gender. When girls are watching it, they're thinking, oh, that's how I've got to act. And with boys, they're just thinking, oh, everybody likes that and I can just do that. And so, we need good sex education. Again, I'm not sure what it's like where you are, but here in Australia, we think we are so progressive. Australia would say, we are way above, we're probably on par with the New Zealanders and the Canadians. So we think we're so progressive, but in most schools, all they teach is STIs and unwanted pregnancies. Nobody's teaching respect for relationships and what a good relationship looks like, and that it's not power and control and consent and all of that stuff. Teenagers want to know, how do you ask somebody out? How do you break up with somebody? We need all of that sort of education, and really the red flags around what is a violent, not necessarily violent, but also if you're being put down, or all of these other things that can happen in relationships, that we need to highlight that with young people.
In India, also we have a subject of life skills, but they talk about the responsibility, the discipline, also punctuality, but not a single chapter about sex education and relationship and the love, as you said. So this is very important for children as well as for the teenage as well.
So is pornography, do you think, a huge problem in
Yeah,
India?
yeah, yeah. It is a huge problem. The government also banned the porn sites, but they always find the alternative for opening it through the VPN, or they create the site, shift the content into another site, and all. So this can't be just. We need strict rules on imposing on it, so that no one can able to access it, even the 18 plus as well as the below the 18 as well. So this is the only way to ban the porn and stop this thing.
but you know, you can put in the most innocent searches into Google Images and things like that. Um, you know, I was talking at a school, and a teacher said she was teaching protective education with her 5 and 6 year olds. And she said to the class, "What makes you feel safe?" And a little girl put up her hand and said, "Puppies." So she's typed in puppies into Google Images. And the first picture that came up, lady with no top on and two puppies painted on her breasts on the smart board for the children to see. And she's freaking out.
Seriously, it's a
So
huge problem.
it is. And it's desensitizing children to, you know, and YouTube, there is so much pornography on YouTube. And again, you can, you know, kids will be looking at you mentioned that you looked at some of my stuff on my YouTube channel. I don't know if you saw the one about Minecraft,
Yeah.
and how the first video that I clicked on had all this swearing in it, but then down the side, it had the Minecraft characters in different sexual positions. Um, you know, there's the movie Frozen, and one of the characters whose name's Elsa, if a 6-year-old little girl typed in Elsa into YouTube, she's going to come across a video with two adults, one dressed as Spider-Man, the other one dressed as Elsa, having sex and having twins. And every time I come across it, you know, because I report it, and it gets taken down, but then it gets put straight back up again, sort of thing. So, you know, parents really need to, and I'm not saying don't let children go on YouTube, but parents need to be sat next to their child when they're, you know, doing these things. And even YouTube for the kids isn't 100% safe.
So, what do you think? It is the technology that is promoting this thing, or the parents actually giving mobile phones to very small kids?
This is going to be, no, I'm going to upset a lot of people here. Um, you know, this is a huge social experiment, and I hate to think in 5 years where children are going to be. I've When I do training, I've got these pictures that I put up and I shock people. One of them is of a potty with an iPad holder on it, and so kids are being toilet trained sitting on a potty with an iPad holder. And so, and then there's one with a little baby in a rocker with an iPad holder. But the worst one, there is a baby's cot, and there's an iPad holder at the head of the cot. So when children are doing tummy time, where they're supposed to be building up their body strength, they're watching an iPad. You know, kids, if they're on iPads, they're not building the neural pathways in their brain. They're not hearing language. I was at a school in New South Wales a couple of years ago, when on the first day of school term, when 24-year-olds got to go to school for the very first time, of the 20 children, there were only 4 children I could understand perfectly. All of the other children's language was delayed because of, I believe, of technology, because people aren't talking to their children. They're just, you know, skimming away watching Peppa Pig or whatever it is. It was so bad that the school had to employ a speech therapist for 2.5 days a week to bring the children's language up to where it should be for kids of that age. So, you know, I know that parents are busy and things like that, but, you know, technology is not the answer, because, you know, because of the chemicals that are produced in the brain, like dopamine, and, you know, that's why when you take the iPad away, they have these techno tantrums where they, you know, kick and scream and cry, because, you know, you're just cutting it off, sort of thing. And they almost go into, you know, they go into a meltdown because they want that thing. Kids need to be climbing, and they need to be pulling pots out of the cupboard and banging on them and doing all of those things to build those. And if we don't build the neural pathways in the brain, if we don't build them, we lose them. They die off. So, you know, I know parents do the best they can and they're busy and things like that, but, you know, kids don't need to be on technology as much as they are.
even even the adults as well. Actually, I'm a lot into meditation and stuff. So I actually had that thing whenever I took my mobile phone and sleep after this, immediately after using mobile phone. So I do not wake up at the time I wanted, like 5 o'clock in AM. But if I does the thing like if I leave my mobile phone for 1 hour before sleeping, so I actually waked up at the particular time I wanted without even any alarm or even any clock. So this is the thing, technology creating a big, huge impact in our system and mind also.
Definitely. But also, if I'm holding this and I'm talking to you, you're not the most important person in this conversation. This is.
Yeah.
And, one of the things that we do in our program is we teach children to have a safety team of 5 adults they can talk to. And how it works is they need to be adults. So what I do with the kids is usually somebody from their home, if they want mum and dad, whoever lives in their house takes up the thumb, and then 2 people from school or 2 people from childcare, and then 2 people from the community. So aunts and uncles, grandparents, next door neighbours, sports coaches, people like that. Whenever I'm saying to children, who from your house, if something bad was happening, who from your home would you talk to? I have lots of children say, Holly, I don't want, mum or dad on my safety team because, mum's always on Facebook, or dad comes to my cricket match and he never watches. He's always on his phone, or, and kids are feeling really disconnected from everybody. And people that prey on children look for vulnerable children and available children that aren't connected. And so again, I'm not trying to put parents down. And if they don't know about it, then, I think when you know better, you do better. So if parents realize just the impact, I'm in schools and I get to stand in front of about 4,500 children every year from 3 to 17. And I was in a small country town here in Western Australia, and I said to a class of 5-year-olds, do grown-ups always listen to kids? And a little 5-year-old girl goes, no, because they're always on their phones. Out of the mouths of babes.
Seriously.
So that's kids' perception, but those little people that we tuck into bed every night are watching us all the time. And another thing that we teach in the program is we have 2 things. We all have the right to feel safe all of the time, and we can talk to someone about anything. And so if I'm always on my phone and a child wants to talk to me, and I'm too busy for them, when I ask kids, do adults always listen to kids? Without a word of a lie, every kid says no. And I've taught my program in Cambodia and also in Indonesia. And even when I was in Cambodia, in Khmer, very clearly, when we said, do grown-ups always listen to kids? Even there, the kids said no. In Khmer, very clearly. So, kids want parents' time. And so, even if parents are busy all the time, if they could just make, 10, 15 minutes a day for each child just to check in with them, see how their day went, again, that builds connections, and we need children to have connections so that if something bad happened, they can tell that adult.
I'm actually so blessed because my father and mother are not much into technology, and they actually prefer family time in front of technology or and using Facebook. I mean, they are on Facebook and they know stuff about Facebook as well, but they actually prioritize their time. Even I belongs to the IT field, so that's why I have to always on computer and laptop always. So they always come to me and say, just leave it for a minute or 30 minutes. It will stay in your eyes and take care of your eyes as well. You want food as well. So I'm so blessed to have parents like them.
Yes, you really are. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
There are, I saw a documentary how in Korea, people are, adults your age are going into these virtual worlds and gaming and just being in these virtual worlds, and they're actually dying because they're forgetting to eat and go to the bathroom. And so their bodies are just, after 3 days, just break down, and they're found on their, over their computer, because people, they need that time away just to give their brain a rest, really. And another thing is, parents think that they have to keep their kid busy all the time. Kids need to be bored. That's when your imagination kicks in. And so if you're gaming all the time, your brain's always stimulated, but it never goes into that calm thing. So it is actually good for kids to be bored.
My mother also very concerned about me not playing PUBG because it is quite popular in India and throughout the world as well. It is a multiplayer game which kids actually play these days a lot.
Sorry, which game?
PUBG, PUBG, PUBG.
I haven't come across that.
It's
I'll have to
it's
look it
banned
up.
in India now, but 2 days ago it's banned in India now because that is a Chinese game.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So how did it work?
It actually an online game in which you can add your friends as well, and they play together all and also talk with each other as well during playing. And the game is divided into two teams, and you have to kill people in the team.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
here in Australia, there's Roblox, Minecraft, um, um, Fortnite. Fortnite's very big here for young people, which is it sounds similar where you've got to kill people but they use it with an app called Discord where you actually have headphones and you're talking to people. So people are grooming children. They're sending pornography down the line to children, but because the kids have got headphones on, their parents don't know what they're hearing and what they're up to. So, another tip for parents if they're watching is not to let children have technology in bedrooms or private places. It needs to be in a public place because we've just had a terrible case here in Western Australia where they've just arrested 11 men for grooming 140 teenage girls to send sexual images on Facebook and Instagram and things like that. So, parents don't realise the people that groom children, if a child's online, then they're vulnerable because every pedophile in the world gets to come into if it's in their bedroom, gets to come into their bedroom and talk with their children. So parents, really need to, educate themselves around technology and all of this stuff because I was down in a small country town 2 weeks ago and 80% of the children from 8 to 12 were on TikTok. And when I ran a parent workshop that night, I did say to the parents, you do realise, most of your children are on that app TikTok. And the parents have gone, oh yeah, but it's just a dancing app. So I pulled out my phone and showed them. I can guarantee you that night everybody was banned from TikTok.
Yeah, seriously. TikTok is finally banned in India.
I know. Way to go, you guys. You're all over it. I'm loving you. I wish our government was that ballsy. But the problem is, if it's not TikTok, there's something called Livey, which is another live streaming app. And there's always going to be stuff coming up the next trendy thing. TikTok's going out a bit of fashion here with some of the young people because businesses now have realized how powerful it is. So, it was like Facebook was really popular with kids, but then old people like me got on it and the kids went away from that. They went on to Instagram
Yeah.
and Snapchat. But, there's always going to be something coming up, closely behind it. So, again, it's for parents to follow pages that educate parents. Like probably my most favorite Facebook page to follow is Common Sense Media from America because for me, they are the most up-to-date, so whether it's a movie, an app, a game, they research it. But what I love about them, they don't just say ban everything. They give parents a really objective view. These are the pros, these are the cons, these are the conversations you could have with young people. And so parents just really need to, to educate themselves because, there are also things like ghost apps where a parent could look at their child's phone and say, oh, my kid doesn't have any social media, but they'll have two calculators on their phone. And the parent go, oh, my kid must be very clever. They've got two calculators. And one is a ghost app where they hide all their social media and sexy pics and all of their apps and stuff. So parents really need to not just give kids technology without, you wouldn't hand your kid the car keys and say, here. So don't hand your kid a phone and say, here.
Yeah. So you were talking about the virtual reality. You were talking about the boy that have been cause some problem because of virtual reality. So actually, as I'm in IT field, so the next thing which will be booming after this will be the virtual reality. They are actually thinking about virtual reality in everywhere, in over the news as well as in movies. Movies, it's still there in movies, and also enhancing the gap between virtual and the real world.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, I was at a police conference and they blew my mind because they were showing us, they were from America, they came over to Australia for this conference, and they just had Barack Obama's face, but they were making him say, and you would have sworn that it was Barack Obama saying this stuff, and it was so, you just knew it wasn't him, sort of thing. But to the naked eye, you would have assumed, you would have bet your bottom dollar that that was him. And so, there is just so many, it blows my mind because I've been teaching this program for so long. you know 10 years ago I wasn't talking to children about pornography, and now I have to. I think even in 2 years time, it's just going to go through the roof, and I can't even imagine in 2 years time what sort of apps and technology and virtual worlds and all of that sort of stuff where we will be, because it's just growing so fast.
So, how do you talk with children about the pornography?
Well, with children under the age of 10, I call them private pictures and private movies. And so one of the things that we do in my program is we teach about public and private. So public means people around, and the sign for private here in Australia is your hand in front of your mouth, and then you pretend you've got a key and you're locking your lips. And so we talk about public and private rooms and places, things that you do with your body that's private, clothing, body parts. And as part of that lesson, we talk about public pictures and private pictures. And so I've actually written 2 children's books to help adults talk about it. So I pull out one of them and I say to the children, we're going to pretend this is an iPad, and I'm going to type in fairies, but a picture of a lady with no clothes on but big fairy wings comes up. What should I do? And I had a little boy once go, well, I'd type in fairies with clothes on. Like, you silly one. Kids are so funny. But what I teach children to do is, if you're on an iPad and you see naked pictures, I need you to turn it over and I need you to go and show an adult. And the reason that I say I need you to go and show the adult is because I was tagged into some child exploitation material, and the impact that it had on me traumatized me, and I'm still having flashbacks, and children are telling me that when they see these images that it's giving them nightmares. I was talking to a counsellor just recently who was dealing with a young 10-year-old girl who couldn't go to sleep. She just refused to go to sleep. And I said, she'd been, she had 5 or 6 sessions with this young girl. And I said, has she seen pornography? And she's gone, at 10, really? I was going, yeah, ask her. She did. And that was the reason why she wouldn't, because when she closed her eyes, that picture would pop in her mind. So she was just trying to stay awake all the time so she wouldn't get that picture in mind. So I say to kids, I need you to go and show an adult. And then I also do some brain science with 6-year-olds. So I explain to them, in your brain's made up of millions and millions of connections. But if you see pictures or moves of people with no clothes on, it changes the connections in your brain. It rewires your brain. It also releases a chemical in our brain called dopamine and oxytocin and serotonin. But with 6-year-olds, I don't talk about those other two. With teenagers, I talk about those other two and, how they impact. But with 6-year-olds, I just say it releases a chemical called dopamine. Now, if I'm running around, my brain will create a little bit of dopamine to say, hey, Holly, keep running around. Or if I eat chocolate, a little bit of dopamine to say, hey, Holly, keep eating chocolate. But if I see those pictures, it's like a flood or a tsunami of this dopamine in your brain. And our brain loves it. So even if what you see makes you feel yuck, it tricks your brain into going and looking at more and more. So as well as either turning it over if it's an iPad, if it's a laptop, shut the lid, or if it's a computer, just turn off the screen so you can't see it again. But you must show it to an adult. And then I explain to them that if that pops into your mind, so I say you need to say, that's private out loud, and turn away. And it's like turning off the dopamine tap, and then show an adult. But then I say, and if it pops into your brain, I need you to close your eyes and make a picture in your mind of something that you like to see or you like to do, so that they can, try and rewire their brain. Because, I've met 11-year-olds here in Australia that say that they feel like they're addicted to pornography. And, in Australia, we've got 17-year-olds with erectile dysfunction because of the chemical reaction. And because our brains are wired for novelty, they might see something and then our brain gets bored with that. So then they have to look at weirder and weirder stuff to get the same hit. So with teenagers, I really go a lot more into the science, but also I do a lot more science around that, but also try and bring it back to humanity. Because I was working with a group of 50 14-year-old boys, and they were describing the most heinous things happening to women, but all they could say is, oh, but miss, it's just so funny. My worry is in 10 years, those young fellas are going to be our future teachers, police, doctors, nurses, parents, and they're being so desensitized. And they just, so I do some stuff around, so how much do you think a porn star gets paid? And they've gone, oh, $1 million, miss, $500,000, miss. Yeah, no, they don't. Pornography is the only industry in the world that women are actually paid more than men. And they can get between $1,000 and $1,500 a movie. And the boys go, what? To do that? Yeah. What do you think they do with that money? And this one young fella goes, oh, I think they buy costumes, miss. I said, I don't know what you're looking at, but the stuff I know about, there's not too many costumes. I say it either, many of them are trafficked into that. They don't, choose to do it. And a lot of it can either, goes on drugs or alcohol. The average career of I say, how much do you think they earn? And then how long do you think they do it for? Oh, 5 years. And, they buy a big house and a big flash. No, the average career of a porn star is 3 months. And, many of them die by suicide because they feel so bad about what they're made to do. And so, I'm just trying to humanize these, because I say, boys, that's somebody's sister. That's somebody's daughter. How would you feel if it was your sister? And they go, oh, and they're horrified. And so, I just want them to see. So I say, now, knowing all of that stuff, that they're trafficked, that they have to sign a piece of paper to say they consented to do the movie, but they don't get paid until they sign the piece of paper. So that's not consent. But I say, so how do you feel about pleasuring yourself now that you know all of this? That's a good thing, miss. And so, I'm not saying don't do it and yelling at them and things like that, but I'm just trying to humanize it for them and to get them to realize that, because they are being desensitized. That was a very long, answer to your short question.
Okay. So what are the early warning signs about the child abuse?
Again, that's, there can be some signs, but also sometimes there may not be any signs. And I was just talking to a lady just this week, ironically, who was horribly sexually abused by her grandfather. And yet when she went to school, she was a straight A student. She was the best child in the class. And she said, Holly, nobody in the world, because my home life was so bad, she was beaten as well by other family members as well as sexually abused by her grandfather. She said there's nobody in the world that would have picked it. But, there are some children that show signs like, soiling and bedwetting and things like that. But to be honest, quite often parents will say, what are the indicators, or, what does a pedophile look like? And again, that can be anybody. So, for parents to keep an eye on behaviour changes. When I do parent workshops, I'm quite often asked by parents, Holly, so how would I know if somebody was grooming my child? And I basically say, if anybody is nicer to your child than you are, or wanting to spend more time with your child than you are, you need to ask the question.
Yeah.
Because there is no, I wish there was, a stamp on people's heads, or there was a checklist to go, oh, well, my child doesn't do any of that. So, because it's just, because of the grooming, one of the things that I teach the children is this for safe and this for unsafe. And every time I use either word, I always use this sign language. And then I happened to be watching an episode of Oprah, and she was interviewing an African-American male actor who said he was sexually abused by 3 different family members from the age from 5 to 10. And he kept saying, but my body would fail me, meaning he got an erection. Now, the Americans aren't quite as blunt as me. I was just like, just say it, but they don't. But then I started to think, how can I, because sexual touching, our body reacts. It's like, when you're cold, you get goosebumps. You can't control that. If you're being touched in a certain way, your body is going to respond. So kids think I asked for it. The perpetrator might be saying you enjoyed it. You obviously liked it. So I came up with confused, because confused is in the middle, because you're not quite sure if you're safe and you're not quite sure if you're unsafe. So we can talk to kids about confusing touches. So, because of the grooming process, they're so manipulative, and they groom the child, they groom the family, they groom the community. You'll be aware that we had the Royal Commission here in Australia into institutionalised sexual abuse. And it wasn't just the church, it was, Scouts and Swimming Australia and all of these different organisations have been implicated. And people would have said, no way, not that person. But it's because they all get groomed. I watched on Netflix recently the story, I don't know if you've seen it, the story about Gymnastics USA, and how the medical doctor, sexually abused over 500 girls. And, he was giving them internal examinations, and they just thought, he's the doctor. They didn't actually realise that they were being sexually abused and stuff like that, because of the grooming, and because it was such an eye-opener. And anybody that's got time, I would really recommend your viewers watch it, because it was so interesting, because it showed that the coaches were so mean to the girls, but yet here was this nice doctor who was like a breath of fresh air and everybody's friend, and he'd groomed everybody. The parents all loved him, and none of the girls saw anything wrong with it, because they hadn't been told that nobody should be doing that to you, sort of thing. And so, again, it all comes down to educating everybody, and to start as early as possible.
So, what to do if child discloses that they have been abused? What will be the first step?
That, to be honest, that's a fantastic question, because I'm sure it's the same in India. Here in Australia, especially dads say to their kids, anybody hurt my kid and I'd kill him. Nobody's going to hurt my kid, and things like that. And so that's not helping children. So I explain, the last thing I do when I do a parent workshop is explain exactly what to do. You have to stay calm. Even if you go, ah! You'll stop the child from telling you. So you have to stay just dead calm. And so to help parents, inside you're going to be going, but you can't show that. So to help you stay calm, I need people to say these 4 things. I'm glad you told me. I believe you. It's not your fault. And I'm going to do something about it. And if people, just all adults, whether they're coaches, even grandparents need to know this, because parents say, if anything happened to my child, they'd tell me. And they won't, because of the grooming process, because they think they have to protect you. There's lots of reasons why they won't. They're more likely to, it's more likely a child would disclose to their parents, their friends, sorry, their best friend's parent or something like that. So everybody needs to know those 4 things. So I'm glad you told me. I believe you. It's not your fault, and I'm going to do something about it. We have to believe all children. The statistics on children lying about this are so minuscule. We have to rely that, you know, if a child was lying, in the, you know, 1,000,001 chance that was happening, that the police will investigate them and get to the bottom of it. We mustn't go and approach the perpetrator. You know, if the parent goes, you know, to the whoever and says, did you do this to my child? And this actually, I had a parent actually tell me this story, how she worked on she had a farm down south in here in Western Australia, and her 9-year-old daughter came to her because on their farm, they had a farm worker, a farm hand, who had a 14-year-old stepson. And she had 3 children. The lady who owns the farm has 3 children. The middle one is 9. Her 3 kids and the 14-year-old go down to the dam on their bikes for a swim. The 14-year-old boy says to the 9-year-old, I'm going to have sex with you. She didn't know what that was. She's gone home and said, Mum, that boy, you know, down the road, he said he's going to have sex with me. The mum goes to the farmhand and says, did your kid say this? The farmhand goes to the kid and says, did you say that? He said, no, she's telling lies. He goes back to the owner of the farm and says, no, she's lying. The mum goes back to the little girl and says, did he really say that? So the 9-year-old hears, my mum doesn't believe me. I mean, what 9-year-old would say, you know, make that sort of stuff up? She would have known her daughter. So we have to report it to authorities. We mustn't go to the perpetrator, or, you know, it's not our job to investigate. Soon as somebody has, you know, knows something has happened to a child, we have to get them in front of the police, because if I'm a child and I've suffered sexual abuse and I tell you, that's your problem now. I've dealt with it. That's, you know, I expect you to do something. But each time I have to tell my story, I'm reliving it. So we need the children, for their major disclosure, to be in front of police, hopefully in front of a video camera, so that that can be used as evidence. And again, I'm not sure in India how, you know, what the reporting things are, but that's, you know, that's what, to get the best result, we need children, for their major disclosure, to be in front of authorities so that they can deal with it. And we had a case here that I had the police ring me and they said, Holly, we love you. We've just been out to our community where a 5-year-old boy in front of the camera said he put his penis in my bottom, no sucking his fingers, no shame. He could say exactly the words. And they said, Holly, we love you, because we can show that to the lawyer of the baddie, and that little fella will never even have to tell his story again. That guy will just plead guilty, because that is such strong evidence. So one of the main things for parents is to teach their children the correct anatomical names for their body parts. I'm not sure again in India what it's like, but here in Australia, you know, people have cute names and silly names, and I call them either home names or street names. We need to get away from this being your rude parts. There's nothing rude about these parts. They're just your private parts. So, you know, kids will, I've heard front girls' private parts being called a lily, a flower, a Minnie, a Mickey, a Nellie, a Tweety, a frou-frou, a frangipani, a froggy. The latest, I know, right? The latest thing kids in Perth are calling it is a cookie. So if a child gets touched there and goes and tells the teacher, oh, you know, the boy across the road touched my cookie, the teacher's going to go, well, don't be mean, they're around, because they don't know. So is it the same in India? Do parents, are they very strict about using those words, or do they have?
Yeah, they're very strict about using these words as well. I don't know about the scenario now, but when I was in primary, they don't actually even talk about this sexual education and all these things. But there should be a chapter or a subject about this particular topic.
But see, for children, like even if a parent's got, a 1-year-old baby, you're going, touch your nose, touch your chin, touch your ear. That's your penis, that's your testicles, that's your bottom. That's it. That's your vulva, that's your vagina. It doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be. It's not sex education when you're little. They're just your private parts. They're your special parts, and nobody's allowed to touch them unless it's for medical reasons or hygiene. If somebody did, it wouldn't be your fault. You're not allowed to touch anybody else's private parts. If you do, you are breaking the law. No one's allowed to show you private pictures. No one's allowed to take private pictures of you, and you're not allowed to take private pictures of yourself. So they're just simple rules, but if parents just, were that comfortable, and it's easy, if you start with your 1-year-old baby just doing it, then it's much easier to do it when they're, 4 than when you're trying to do it when they're 15.
In India, we just have ears, eyes, nose, mouth, hands, and legs, and stomach and forehead. They actually forget the private parts. They don't talk about it.
Well, we're going to change that.
Yeah, definitely. So, what is your message to all the parents and also as well as the children of the viewers who are watching this video?
To listen to your children, to practice consent, to really model that. So, if when you're allowed to give kids high fives again, I don't even give a kid a high five. I don't just put up my hand and say, can I give you a high five? If we met, I'd say, can I give you a hug?
Wow.
It's, just modeling that all the time. If you were holding, a toddler, an 18-month-old toddler, I'd go to the baby, can I have a cuddle? If they put out their arms, I'd take them. If they go like this, I wouldn't take them.
Okay.
So it's not about, and some people say, like, because I work a lot in childcare centres, and I say, you need to ask children to change their bottoms. And they're going, oh, but what if the kid says no? Well, then you say either this staff member could do it or this staff member could do it. So you still giving them some sort of power. If kids won't let you brush their hair because it hurts, so, well, you don't want to go to school with messy hair. So I'm going to do it really gently, or you do it. So we're trying to empower children. So consent's really important. Teaching the correct anatomical names for their body, helping them set up this safety team is really, I really encourage, and not to have people from the same environment, because it has to be, if everybody's from the same environment, like in some of the communities that I go into, people know what's going on. They just don't know how to deal with it. So, having different, not all family members or not all people from the same church group or whatever it is. Just having open conversations and modeling for children. You can tell me anything. Nothing that you'll ever tell me will stop me loving you. Kids need to hear that a million times. And if a child comes to you with something, you're so busy and they've just got a little niggly thing that you think is no big deal, please, when you've got time, go back and find out what that problem was, because, if kids can't tell you the little things, then they think they can't tell you the big things. So, there's lots of other things in the program that I've got an online parent course that's lots of things that we cover, but for me, those are the main things that I'd like your listeners to take away from this interview.
Wow. I will take care of these. So let's just begin with another part of this interview, which is the rapid fire round. So I will be asking you some questions and you need to answer them. Those are some simple questions like what the place you visit, okay? So are you ready for that? Yeah, so which place you want to visit after COVID?
Well, to be honest, and it's not just because we're on here. Recently, I was on a part of a conference. It was an international conference, but it was run by Cactus Foundation, and they have a march for child abuse prevention, and 25,000 people go on this march. And I've promised, as soon as we can travel, that I'm coming to India to go on that march with the girls from Cactus Foundation.
Wow, I'm waiting for you. So, who is your favorite actor?
Colin Firth,
Oh wow.
Mr. Darcy.
Yeah, yeah. So, which cartoon character is your favorite one?
Um, oh, that is a tricky one. Probably Betty Boo.
Okay. So, tell me about your best childhood memory.
Um, we had a golden retriever when we were children. I'm the oldest of four, and yeah, just spending time with our golden retriever. She was, um, we'd be off doing something, and she'd sort of round us all up and things like that.
Nice. So, moving on to the last question of this interview. So, which is your favorite Netflix web series?
Um, well, sex education. It's
Oh,
yeah, it's about a mum and a child
yeah,
and things like that. So I just
yeah.
like it's quite forthright, a bit like me. I like to say
Okay.
how it is, and I think it's a great way. I also quite like, and a lot of people don't, but 13 Reasons Why. It was very controversial here because it of the suicide story and things, but I think if we use it in the right way, it could open up conversations for young people. So,
Second reason why is also kind of depressing for me actually.
oh, yeah,
The
it
first
is, but
season was a lot, especially
it,
that scene of Hannah Baker dies in the bathtub, and that is kind of really, really very, very depressing for me.
no, it really was. But the problem here was adults were going, it needs to be banned, it needs to be. So it actually
Yeah,
turned young people onto it. And so for me, I think it was a conversation missed. Rather than banning something, I would, I would have liked to have written lesson plans to go with it so that, because everything that happened in that story I could relate back to. Those children didn't have a safety team.
yeah.
At any stage, one of those kids had have spoken to an adult, it wouldn't have gone the way that it was going. And so, one of the things we talk to the kids about is, you know, when you feel unsafe, you get something called your early warning signs, those body signals like butterflies in your tummy and your heart racing. So if you get these body signals, you need to tell an adult. So there were so many teachable moments in that show. And I just think it was a missed, rather than trying to ban it and then not give young people the opportunity to talk about it. Like I was at schools and they were saying, oh, you mustn't talk to the kids about it. And yet all the kids are talking about it out in the playground. So, banning, prohibition never worked. Banning stuff isn't going to work. Education is what we need.
Yeah. So it was great to interview you, ma'am. I would like to thank you again on behalf of whole team of Mitti Ke Rang for giving us this wonderful message and to educate people about child abuse, which is the word which we did not oftenly use in India. Actually, we don't much talk about it, even on the news, even not even in the textbooks or education system as well. So thank you, ma'am. And girls and boys, this is all for today. We will be back with another story, another person. So for now, be safe, stay tuned.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you, ma'am. Bye.